Hello, I think I am live. If you can hear me, that'd be great. Maybe just sound off in the comment section. Good to see everyone here. My name is Brendan. I'm the head of Open Owl Studios. Also, I don't even know my title on Threshold. Maybe let's say creative director on Threshold. We got a great team that's working on the game. You've seen some of the evidence of the hard work over the past number of months for us. We're so excited about the game and happy that we could share some of it with you. Realize that we only shared kind of a part of the game, not all of the game. There's a bunch of coming soon sections. We didn't show any gameplay footage. There's a bunch of different things. So hey, off the top, let's make sure, if you haven't, make sure to join our Discord. You'll see the Discord in our GameFound link. So you can go there, join the Discord. Also, make sure to read the GameFound update. It was juicy, big update, lots of stuff. We had a few typos kind of scattered throughout, but hey, that's okay. It's just a update, massive update, and there's a lot of questions. And so what I want to spend some time doing over the next little while here is just answering some questions that I kind of wrote down and collected, but also answering any questions that we have here on YouTube. And so we're going to show comments on. Okay, never mind. I wonder, maybe comments might just be popping up as we go. I just turned the show comments on stage, so we're going to answer questions. I'm also going to do a proper use, I think, of AI and have it transcribe this video, and then I'm going to reformat it for an update that we'll just put on Board Game Geek that has all the Q&As in written form. Because I've done live stream Q&As, and there's some people who don't want to sit through whatever an hour long video and would rather read it. So we're going to have that posted on Board Game Geek. Okay, so let's dive into it. We're going to dive into it. I'm trying to think where to where to start. And I think I saw a question from someone in chat here, Board Game Wizard, which is a great question. The theming is really cool of Threshold, they say, but I would like to know about the overall goal. I think having a goal would be good, but the freedom on how you get there is nice. Great. So Threshold, let's kind of take a step back and I'll talk through some of the structure and really what is Threshold. So at the core, Threshold is an epic game. It's an RPG, right? So it's a role-playing game that has both kind of region exploration and tactical combat. Everything's kind of happening dynamically and fluidly. And so you're kind of progressing in these regions. You're exploring different landmarks. You're going on like kind of mini adventures. You're also doing quests. And these quests are often party quests. So the whole team has to join up, complete these quests, which often have combat. And as you're doing all these things, you're leveling up your character. You're gaining loot. And the loot kind of results in new skills that you can add to your deck, and you're progressing your character, and this is kind of like the big overarching thing. But hey, that's not the goal of the game. What's the goal? Well, there is a driving narrative, just like, you know, if you boot up World of Warcraft or Guild Wars or Skyrim or any of these kind of big epic games, you'll have a driving narrative. And I think actually Skyrim or Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls is kind of a good kind of reference point for us to talk about how you go about playing Threshold. So beginning of Threshold, you're faced with the story, and we'll talk more about the story in the future. But there's a story with this looming threat that's threatening the world that you inhabit. It probably has something to do with these big gates, which we call Threshold. And if you've seen the artwork, right, there's this monster coming through. So I'm gonna venture a guess that the story has something to do with that. And so you're kind of thrust into the story. And that's your main quest, and so there's a quest line that is your kind of main quest that's going to be like, hey, you do this, and then you do this, and then you that kind of is a linear kind of quest line. And each of the quests will have different things. They'll have story. They'll have combat setup, all these different elements. So they'll have, hey, this is where you need to go to on the region map to initiate the quests. These are the things you need to do. It's not all going to be killing the enemies. It might be collecting things, might be doing all this stuff. Quests will also have a recommended level. So you might have a quest that you get that's recommended as for level 5, but maybe you're level 3. So you could do the quest. Nothing is stopping you from doing that level 5 quest. You just might get your butt whooped a little bit because it's going to be balanced for players who are level 5. But kind of if we're kind of going on the quest, if we're looking at the quest, you're also going to be given there's going to be side quests and things that you can just stumble across. Maybe you interact with a landmark and you're given a side quest to go save this alchemist who got lost somewhere, and so you can go and do that. Or we have taken some inspiration from some like the guild stuff in the Elder Scrolls series, and so we have these different factions that you can interact with. One's the Guardians, and we have the Aether Consortium and the Gilded Pact. These are the 3 factions which we haven't talked about, but they'll have their own kind of quest lines, and a lot of it will be kind of circling around what the thresholds are all about and how they can take advantage of them. They'll have their own motives and stuff, and so you're being propelled right in the story, right? You're going to be wanting to progress in the story because you're also going to be leveling up this whole time, right? You're leveling up your character. We have levels from 1 to 40. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but you're leveling up your character and you're doing all these things, but that's not all you can do, because the game's not like, it's not like a kind of classic campaign game like Gloomhaven or even like Stars of Acarioso, game that we made 5 years ago, where you have a scenario and it leads into another scenario and it leads into another scenario and it leads into another scenario. If all Threshold had were quest, it would be similar to that, but that's not all Threshold has. So quests are always initiated in the region exploration. So as you're kind of exploring the region, there will be a quest marker, but where you can go to and you can initiate any of your active quests. But you can also do a lot of other things. You can interact with these landmarks, and sometimes landmarks are towns, sometimes they're like just special places on the map. You can find interesting people. You can go fishing. You can probably fight in a gladiator arena. You can maybe fight in a PvP arena and win some prizes and these different things. You can go and collect materials, and all of this happens. We haven't talked about how you do all these things, and there's a comment in YouTube here that's okay. So we have all these elements. Are you just like what, like how do these work? So for our keen-eyed observers, and especially our play testers, all the cards that you draw are basically structured as a card that you use in combat. Our combat is tactical hex-based combat. But there's also a number on the bottom right that's their test value. This number is from 0 to 5. And a lot, this number shows up in the overworld quite a lot, and we use it in a bunch of different ways. So we use it for like kind of classic skill checks, where you have to have a certain test value in order to succeed the skill check. But we also use it in kind of more like interesting ways. So our harvesting example is like, okay, so you have you draw your hand of 5 cards. That's how you kind of start your round, and you're spending cards to move. So I'm going to spend a card to move a hex. I'm going to spend a card to move a hex. Okay, I'm going to spend 2 cards to harvest. So now I initiate a harvest. Okay, how do I harvest? Well, harvesting in Threshold's pretty interesting because it's basically a mini game of blackjack. So you're going to draw a card from the top of your deck, so not from your hand, from the top of the deck, and you're going to add that test value to your kind of your value. So maybe it has a 2, cool. And when you're harvesting, there's a range. So if you have a value from 3 to 4, you get 1 material. If you have a value of 5, you get 2 materials. If you have 6 or more, you bust. And you enter into like a mini combat, and so you're doing this little push your luck thing, and there's some mitigating factors that ways that you can kind of mitigate those things, but it's like this kind of short, intense moment where you're using these test values in order to to do different actions and all that stuff. And we're going to do a massive update on how these test values show up in the overworld, but it's more than just interacting with things and getting stuff. It's these kind of little kind of activities that you're doing where you're doing these different elements. But if I'm stepping back again, I know I'm doing a little bit of rambling right now, but I'll get to a bunch of these questions. Uh, we have kind of the overworld and the combat. These are kind of like the two kind of core areas, and they interact with one another really well. You can be exploring one side of the map. I can be exploring another side of the map, and maybe you enter into combat, and you're doing that. I'm over here. I'm maybe doing a little adventure or interacting with a landmark, and maybe in the next turn I see that you're getting your butt whipped, so I'm gonna jet over, join your combat, and help you not die. And when you enter into combat, you'll take a combat board, and these combat boards are kind of these they're this board with these hex based grids, and you'll actually see an example of this in our update I think it's in the enemy section or in the combat section where you kind of see these hex based grids, and then you'll kind of set up the combat in the hex based grid, and so your player token is on the map, but either your player standee or your player miniature is on the combat board, and you're using your cards to interact with it and to do all the combat on the player board itself. And so if I join your combat, I'm moving my token on the region board to your token, to your location, and then I place my my miniature into your combat board, and then I'm joining your combat. I'm fighting in there. So really cool. We had this breakthrough where someone we just posed the question, like, can all 4 people be in different combats at the same time? It was just like a hypothetical question, and the answer is yes. There's kind of an asterisk there, where there's some combats, there's some activities like dungeons or big quests that require that the whole party to be present. And so, like, the main quest line, in order to do those combats, the whole party must be present. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, it's a cooperative game. We want people to have fun together. 2, we balance those combats for a party, not for an individual. And then 3, we want everyone to kind of experience those story beats together. And so really, really cool. So that's like a little. It's some of the stuff is much easier to show than to tell, and so I recognize that we are in a position where we're not quite showing everything yet. We're just still telling, and so we'll have some gameplay footage in the coming months, and it'll be good. Okay. So let me try to dive into some questions. I saw a couple of really good ones. A lot of people have asked, launch. Okay, here's a good one. Z or Zed. I'm Canadian, so I'd say Zed. Asks launch date, price point. Okay, well, I'm not going to answer these questions. Just kidding. Launch date later this year. Okay, later this year. Price point. It'll be there's a lot of content. We're gonna make it a very the bang for your buck is gonna be high. There's gonna be a lot of content, but it's not gonna be it's not gonna be a $50 game. It's not even gonna be an $80 game. It's gonna be more than that. But the value is gonna be so high, and it's gonna be great. Okay. BG or Vanu, I guess, was responding to BG Wizard. What's the goal in WoW, for example? Get max level and beat the end game dungeons and raids. Yeah, that's kind of the goal in Threshold too. Get max level, and there's probably a whole other game. There's probably a whole other game that starts when you're level 40, which we haven't talked about, and we won't for a while. But that's why we have that end game section, and it says coming soon. This is a good question. Malgamus says, so like Skyrim, I can play the game for over 100 hours and never finish the main quest. This is no. And this is where the game kind of, in the region, you can play so we level gate the regions very similar to how MMOs. So the first region, Heartland Prairies, is level gated, and it's 1 to 15. So all the content is level 115. You can be a level 40 character and be in that area and doing the stuff, and you could technically leave that zone and go to, the level 15 zone, and do all the other quests. So as I'm speaking this through, technically right now we have the gateway to the next zone is, and how you get to the next zone is by finishing the main quest line in the first chapter. Uh, but as I'm speaking that through, my thing is like, do we need to do that? Uh, Storytelling in games like this is very hard because you often want to reference world state, even in side quests, right? You want to be able to know what the player knows in the story. And so there's a part of us that's like, we need the main story to kind of propel, because there's this escalating type of action, that when you get to the last region, like we assume that the player has a certain level of knowledge of what's happening in the world. Otherwise, a lot of these side quests actually don't make sense. So in a region, it kind of plays like that Skyrim sense. You can kind of do whatever you want, but it's more a little bit like like the WoW example, where that main storyline will kind of pull you into the next region. Okay. Sorry, I'm going through a bunch of other stuff here. Steve from Co-op Guild asks, "Can players drop in and out?" Yes, absolutely. So this save point, and by save point I mean is, hey, when can you pack away the game? So we've designed it that when every player returns to the capital city in the region, they can rest at the inn. When they rest at the inn, it's a little bit of a soft reset for their character. They gain health. They reduce their fatigue. Oh, hey, remind me to talk about fatigue, because this is a very interesting concept that I know our playtesters have experienced, but I don't actually think we talked about it in in our update. But so when you go to the inn, it's a soft reset, and that's when you can, you pack away the board, everything kind of saves clearly like that. But players can drop in and out at any time. One player could be level 8, the other player could be level 3. How you engage in combat is very similar, or sorry, in content and combat, is very similar to how you would engage with level discrepancies in an MMO. So in an MMO, if I'm level 5 and I'm doing your level 2 content, right? Um, I'm gonna be able to beat them up better. I'm gonna be much stronger than those level 2 baddies that you're fighting. I'll be able to help you out, so we'll be able to finish that level 2 content quicker. But I'm going to progress at a slower rate relative to the level 2 person, you progressing, because our curve in threshold is exponential. Our experience point curve is exponential. So we start at level 1, we're progressing to level 40. To get to level 40, you need 999 experience points. To get to level 2, you need 10 experience points. So you can draw that exponential line. How are we tracking the experience points? Eagle eye observers can go look at the GameFound update, and you'll see on the player board, there's these 3 dials that are in the bottom left of the player board, where you're tracking experience points. These player boards are rad. It's like a dual layer on top of a cool storage tray. They're great, but they're the dials, and that's how you're tracking experience points. So circling back to this question, yeah, absolutely. You can be different levels. So you can be playing together. You're going to be progressing at a different rate. And there's this thing I remember playing with my brother, World of Warcraft with my brother. He was like level 35 or something. I was level 5. And so he jumped, or actually he brought me to his zone. And I remember running, and I would get one shot a couple times running across the map. But he brought me to his zone, and I was doing level quote unquote 35 content. And so I was like progressing my character so fast because I was getting so much experience points relative to my level. You can do that in this game. I think probably the most enjoyable experience is if players are kind of all roughly the same kind of level range. So, I would plus or minus 3, especially for doing like big content, like dungeons or main storyline quests. Like you kind of want to be in that kind of level range. But if you're off by a little bit here or there, that's not a big deal. Okay. I like the questions keep on coming. Thank you. We'll answer this question. It's Art O Craft. Anything you can say about session time, setup, total length of gameplay you expect this game to have? Yeah. So let's start with setup and we'll progress from there. So setup and teardown, we have our goal of 2 minutes or less for setup and teardown. I know that seems crazy ambitious for a game this ambitious in scope, but if you have not seen Mythwind in action, I would ask that you go look at Mythwind. Mythwind, I don't say I don't say this to brag, but the tray system in Mythwind, I think, is by far the best that has been designed. Bryce at Black Magic Trays did a fantastic job, but they're not just trays, right? How we use the trays as a gameplay component is great. I've heard that Iridia does stuff pretty well, but I haven't seen it. But I do know that Mythwind has some of the fastest. I can set up a game of Mythwind in 90 seconds, a 2-player game of Mythwind in 90 seconds, and this is a massive, massive content. Rich game. And so the other thing, your initial setup is always going to take a little bit more time. So when you set up a region, it's going to take a little bit more time, but it's your subsequent setups and teardowns. Okay, so that's that. The session time is very flexible. So it kind of depends on what you want to do in your playthrough. So let's just say I'm playing solo, and I look at the clock. I have 30 minutes before before I am leaving out for dinner. I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna like play a little bit of Threshold. So you take out Threshold, you're up and playing in a couple minutes after thinking that, okay, cool. Now I have 20 some minutes left. What do you do? Well, it's like, well, maybe you don't have enough time to complete a whole quest. So you know what? You're just gonna do like a random combat encounter. Because you're trying to get some more gear, get some more loot, or just some experience points. Cool. So you go and you do a random combat encounter, 20 minutes, boom, you're back in town. You save the game, you go to dinner. Cool. Maybe you have a little bit more time, right? 45 minutes, an hour. Okay, cool. Hey, let's do a big quest. Great. Do a quest, big combat, all that stuff. Fun. Maybe you have even more time, right? Maybe you have 90 minutes. Okay, cool. Hey, I'm gonna get some friends together, or you'll go solo and you're going to tackle a threshold dungeon, top tier, high level content, or a world boss. And you're going to, okay, hey, I'm going to, spend some time. This is going to be a big activity. So you jump in and you're doing multiple combats, kind of leading, and it's asking more of you than just like a quest or random encounter. And so you have these things that like range from these small moments of time. Maybe you just want to go on a little adventure. Cool. 10 minutes. Maybe you want to just spend some time harvesting or spend some time exploring the world and finding out things about different landmarks or whatever these things. Yeah, cool. 15, 20, 30 minutes. And you can choose to stop whenever you want. That's like the beauty about how we design our games these days, is that you can stop and start however you want. But if you want to keep on going, if you want to have like a 3-hour marathon session where you literally just do random combat encounters and explorations and you go fishing, you go delving, you go and like climb this mountain, you kind of unlock these memories, you go on these bunch of mini adventures. Absolutely, go for it. Like you don't even have to touch like a big thing. So your session length is really dependent on how you play. Answer your last question, which is total length of time. This is something that we are still tweaking. It is going to be significant if you want. It's really the progression from 1 to 40 is such a fun little challenge, because when we think about like, hey, the question is, how long do we want a player to play in order to level from 1 to 40? This isn't the amount of time that players can spend in the game, because the time is probably 2 or 3 times that length. If you want to be a completionist, it's going to be 2 or 3 times the length it takes to get from 1 to 40. So this is the biggest thing that we can kind of tweak. My hunch right now is kind of that like 30 to 40 hour mark to max level a character. That's what we're currently thinking. And the reason why it's a little bit loosey goosey is because it's such an easy lever to pull. Hey, how much experience do we give players by completing a quest or by killing these monsters or whatever these elements are? And so for me, it's the question, how long do we want the 1 to 40 experience to be? Because that's different than like, there's the 1 to 40, but then there's also all the exploration, discovery stuff, progression elements. And then there's like, okay, hey, the 1 to 40, and then what's the end game experience? And in some ways, at least how we're designing I won't say limitless, because people get weird when I say stuff like that, but long. So that's answering your question without answering your question. Okay. I like Hasty clip here. Hasty thinks he's just saying, or she's just saying, they're just saying, dude, this is dope, dope, dope. Let's push an all-in deluxe tier. So excited for this. That is fantastic. I'm scrolling through here, and there's so many questions. So thanks. Keep them coming. Happy to keep on answering for as long as I can. Let me just, I should have checked to make sure that my schedule is clear. My schedule is clear. It is clear. Fantastic. Okay, so Steve from Co-op Guild says, if someone is doing a non-combat encounter and another player doing a combat encounter, will one of the players have downtime? So Steve, let me first answer a question that you messaged me in Discord. No, I will not be at Gen Con this year. So apologies for not answering. But to answer your question about the downtime, I'm going to say it honestly depends on what you do, but individual turns are actually not very long. This game is snappy. The combat is very quick and fluid. There's sometimes, so remember, you have 5 cards. In order to, like, if you're in combat, each card has a cost. Sometimes they cost 0, sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4. To play a card, you have to spend other cards. So you have this thing, right? I'm going to play this card, and I'm going to spend these 2 cards. Maybe I'll draw a card because I play it. You get these combos, but oftentimes the turns are pretty quick. Quick once in a while, especially with the mystic, and if you do like a cantrip build where you're consistently drawing cards, and those turns are a little bit long, but it doesn't feel bad. Same thing when you're out adventuring the world. Sometimes the turns will be pretty quick, right? Maybe you're just moving positions to get to where you need to go, similar to combat. Maybe you're just moving to get into a good position. So those turns will be pretty quick. But other times, maybe you're exploring, or you're doing these harvesting, or you're upgrading something, and so the turns will be a little bit more involved. But they're all designed to be relatively snappy and relatively the same. And we encourage, as long as players are not in the same combat, we encourage players to act simultaneously. So if you're in combat, I'm harvesting, we're going to be doing these things at the same time. But if I join you in combat, here's actually kind of a fun thing. So let's say you do your combat turn. I'm a couple spaces away from you, Steve. I'm going to spend 2 cards to kind of run over to you and join your combat. You'll have resolved your turn, and then I have only 3 cards to spend in combat, right? Because your cards can carry over. But when you're in combat, it's not simultaneous turns. It's you choose as a group, hey, who wants to go first, who wants to go next, and then it's the enemy action after that. All right, Valdemar. I won't try to say your last name, Valdemar. So, can new player join in the middle of the campaign? If yes, will we need to carry him and level him up first, or can he just join and continue the campaign with us? Go back to, if you go back, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, I actually answered this question where you can kind of do the power level thing. A level 1 person could join you when you're level 20, and the level 1, like, the level 1 person probably doesn't want to get hit in combat. But they're going to level up real quick. They're going to level up real quick. You can share items with them so that you can power them up so their deck of cards gets good. But some of their stats will be a little bit low, like their health and their wounds will be a little bit low. Vanu asks, will dungeons be solo friendly? I might not be able to play this game in a group and would love to experience all aspects from a solo standpoint. Yes, we design all key encounters, and by key encounters I mean party encounters. These are ones where we require the whole party to be present, dungeons being one of those. So we design them in a way that scales on player count. So your setup is different if it's a 1 player, 2, 3, 4. The actual number of enemies scales on player counts, and sometimes the enemy's abilities scale on player count as well. So you can. There are some stuff I won't talk about yet, but there's some content that will require more than just one person. But it doesn't need to be one person. It doesn't need to be more people around your table. Okay, that's it. Dano Super is asking Spanish version. Are you in touch with Bumblebee like for Mythwind? Yep. So we got a lot of partners that we are reaching out to. A lot of interest. People are loving the shape of Threshold. It's a big game though, so it's a commitment from people. It's also a point where it's like we might just commit to doing it ourselves. It just kind of depends on what we want. But we're looking to get this translated in. We've committed to French and German, but we want all the languages. We want Polish and Spanish and Italian and whatever else, Korean, Chinese, whatever else. Death Cheater asks, how about replayability? So there's a lot of different routes of replayability in Threshold. One is just the pure deck building aspect. If I'm leveling a Guardian, that's going to be a very different experience than leveling a Mystic, because your deck is constructed primarily with 2 different sets of cards. You have your character cards and you have your skill cards. Skill cards are gained from items, and you get skill points based off the items you have. So technically, any character can spec into any skill. So that part's maybe not different, but on the other hand, your character decks are significantly different. So your character skills are very different. Like the Mystic is different than the Guardian. And so as you're leveling, each level counts as 1 character point. And oh boy, I'm going to get this wrong, but I believe there's 5 unique cards in each of the skill trees. There's more quantity, but there's 5 unique cards in each of the skill trees. And there are, I'm just opening it up right now. How many unique? There are, I think, 13 to 15, let's say 15-ish unique character cards, not quantity, but unique character cards. So you have a big pool of character cards that you can build your deck with, big pool of skills, and how those interact with one another is wildly different. So that's one way replayability, just in the pure kind of mechanical deck building sense. Other way, there's some story choices that are kind of A/B story choices. Less so in the main quest, but A/B in the other stuff. I also don't think you're gonna get. There's gonna be some sickos out there who 100% each region, and that'll be fun to see. But I doubt most people will 100% each region. And then we have there's also, like, it depends on what kind of player are you. Are you the player that is going to be running the dungeons until you find those special unique items, right? Are you that player? If so, there you go. The dungeons themselves, how they're generated, has a little bit of randomness involved, and so every dungeon run you're going to do is going to feel different. We also have, like I mentioned previously, we also have this whole end game thing, which is designed to be, again, it's not designed to be endlessly replayable, but that's the spirit of it. So there's a lot here. Bonobo Bond asks, do play testers get any reward? So we haven't settled anything, and we're not going to promise anything on this, but if you want to play test, feel free to sign up on the forum. We have a lot of people. Last I checked, it was 70, and that was before the update. So I imagine we have a lot of people interested. Well, I don't. You'll at least be included in the rule book for sure. And I'm not too sure. We might do something special for you play testers, but for now, nothing promising. Maps, Blunderbutt, love the name, asks, maps and combat boards, how much of the box is dual layer boards? Loot affixes represent with sleeves. Will that interrupt someone who likes to sleeve their games? Okay, we got a couple questions here. So the region maps are dual boards, dual layer boards. If things need to save, they're going to be dual layer. If things don't need to save, they're not. So the region boards are dual layer. The combat boards are single layer. You cannot save the game mid combat. There's a way to flee combat. So if you have to leave, like if you have to stop playing, you can run away and stop combat. But the combat boards are single layer. And loot affixes are represented with sleeves. Will that interrupt someone who likes to sleeve their games? So the loot affixes themselves are not sleeves. The loot affixes are maybe they should be sleeves. Actually, this is a good question. Right now, we have the loot affixes as transparent cards, similar to canvas. And so the idea is that you put the transparent loot affix on top of the loot card, and that gets sleeved. But hey, good question. Maybe we'll look into doing unique sleeves for the affixes instead. Although I don't think I like that as much. I like the kind of transparent cards that we have idea for the other stuff. And as far as people who like to sleeve their games, we're trying we're building out space because we recognize it's a deck builder, especially with your player deck. We want you to be able to sleeve that. We have some ideas to make some cool custom card sleeves for that you can use for your character deck. Mitsuru asks, when you reference the 2 minutes to play time frame, is this specifically for your character setup or for getting the game going? Kinfire was one of my most played campaigns heavily for the ease of setup. It's so this is for getting the game going. Your initial setup of the game is going to be longer than 2 minutes. It's your subsequent setups. That's the idea. This is the case with Mythwind. We learned some lessons with Mythwind. I think the initial kind of getting things going with Mythwind was a little bit too long, but it's fine. But once you kind of got everything in place with Mythwind, is great. You could get the game going real quick, and same idea. Yeah, Death Cheater. I love this question. The update mentions guilds. Any cool plans on how that will apply to a larger community base? Yes. Sorry, that's all I got for you. Kanye Studios. Hey, do you have any visual concepts or components to show, knowing full well this is just prototype? Yeah, go to the GameFound update and take a look. In our, or even on the GameFound page, you can see some cards, some boards. We're not showing everything laid out, but we do have a lot of things laid out. Okay, Vanyo has a great question. How will combat at level 27 differ from combat at level 4, apart from me and the opponent having more health and dealing more damage? I hope the game won't get repetitive. So the biggest difference is going to be in how the enemies act and how you will act. So the enemies are actually evolving, like their actions are changing as the game progresses. Similar to kind of how your player deck changes to how the game progresses. So if you join the playtest and you do a level 1 combat, you're going to find that experience very different than a level 7 combat, because the cards that you have in your deck are just drastically different. And so you'll find that your turns are significantly different. And here's the thing. At the core of Threshold, it's just fun combat. Like the game itself is just really, really fun. Um, there's, I would ask the same question, for people who like Magic the Gathering or who like Unmatched, any of these games that people kind of return to over and over and over again. Why do you do that? Like, does the game not get repetitive? It's like, no, because just the game's fun every time, right? You draw 5 cards. It's like, hey, what am I going to do? How am I going to act? Like the game itself is just fun. And for me, that's like kind of like the biggest, justification. It's different because of how the combats interact, how the scenarios work, and how the player stuff. But it's literally just like it's just fun. Um, yeah. Okay. Let's jump down to Marceline or Marceline. Give me a second here. Also, thanks for everyone for joining in or popping in, or people who return to this later. We're marathoning it today. So question here from Marcelin. How does it work for players doing actions separately from each other in the world? So if you're on one side of the world, I'm on the other side of the world. It depends on the action that you're doing. So we have these adventures that kind of like are these like mini personal quests that you can go on. And so sometimes they'll kind of resolve right away. Other times you'll have to go to a location and do a thing. So you'll just be taking actions, and you can be doing that. I might be, like I said, I might be kind of harvesting, or I might be interacting with the landmark. And if I interact with the landmark, I take the region book and I kind of read some entries there. If 2 people are interacting with a landmark at the same time, they're going to have to share the region book or use kind of digital supplements. But like that's kind of a small thing. Kind of depends on what you're doing, so you can just kind of be doing those different things. There are, you talk about this. What kind of interactions can players expect between players? So there's the combat itself. There's some heavy combat player interactions that is encouraged for cooperative play. But there's also some overworld elements where multiple people have to participate in these, certain tests or activities together. I did mention briefly, in one of the landmarks, there is like a gladiator arena, and so if players want to take a break and engage in PvP, you totally can. The winner of said PvP battle will get a special title card that is like a unique ability that will go into your deck, and so the winner can constantly be changing. But these fun little moments where you can be interacting with each other, or you can be off doing your own things. Dano Super is asking if the campaign is going to have any exclusives, or if everything is going to retail. Any stretch goal you can hint? We're gonna have a lot of stuff in this game. Exclusives are a weird piece. This game's going to be kind of big and expensive, and depending on, like, sometimes stores like it, but oftentimes, if a store carries anything, they might just carry like the core box and nothing else, not any of the expansions or add-ons. And so oftentimes add-ons, just by nature, they become exclusive to the campaign. Stretch goals, yeah, we're gonna go all out. We have a lot of plans and hopes, and a lot of it just depends on you, our community, showing up. Yeah, Walter Mack asks this question: will there be separate world map and then separate zoomed in encounter scenario battle maps? Yes, there are. And I think I want to make sure we show this visually in the update, because technically right now we're not. But yeah, it's tactical hex-based combat in a zoomed in battle map. We call them combat boards. Okay, Andrew Wilson is asking, my favorite character abilities are shapeshifting, summoning elemental monster animal companions. Any plans for abilities like these? I'm trying to think how much I want to say without like spoiling some other characters. Yes, some of this, yes. uh, yeah, yeah, Andrew. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for this one. Sarah Nito says, "Will you be limited to 4 players or do you plan to do the same as Mythland? As the game gets expansions and more classes, characters, the number of players can also increase. So I have a note for Luke. Luke Eddy's heading up our combat design, and my question for Luke is, can this game expand to, two 6 player? Oh, sorry, not 6 is too much, but can you play with 5 players? I think we will run into some issues. And so it might be like a home brew thing. There's no reason why you can't component wise, but there might just be some balancing stuff that we don't want to commit to to dealing with. I don't know. So it's something that I want to put a pin in it, and and see, because we've had a number of people ask about 5 players, and I recognize that it's fun to play games with 5 players, especially if you have a 5 player group. And a lot of these campaign style games don't go up to 5 players, except Sarah is mentioning that their 8 player group would enjoy this. So, Sarah, stay tuned for that, because I actually think there's potentially some fun. There's something fun planned for that 8 player group. Um, you would need 2 copies of Threshold, but there's something really fun planned for that, and I do want to talk about it later. Okay, wow. Um, I think I answered a lot of the questions, including a lot of the questions in kind of the Discord and the Game Found page and all that stuff. And we're going to continue having these things, and recognize that, hey, we're still early in sharing stuff, and we're still in development of the game, so everything's subject to change, and we're working on different stuff all the time. And just know that I posted, I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, just from a personal perspective. Like, I love all the games that we've made. Stars and Mythwind and Storyfold and Stone Saga. These are like incredible games. Storyfold, I just literally got a mass production copy yesterday. It is gorgeous, an incredible single player experience. Stone Saga has the most interesting crafting system that has ever been made in a board game. Like, I will say that hands down, Max and Luke have done such a fantastic job. And we're aiming to have that delivered by the end of the year. And we've so it's been thrilling to see kind of the culmination of these different projects. And something I was thinking about for Threshold is like, there's, if you're familiar with this idea of like institutional knowledge, there's a reason why, you know, things get better and better the longer a studio exists, right? Typically, like, you don't make a project or make a game at the beginning and it's like it's the best thing ever. It's like you learn lessons over and over and over again. And I kind of feel like that has happened with our studio. Our team has grown, and our team has kind of like changed and learned a lot of lessons. I have learned a ton of lessons through these massive projects, and I feel like Threshold is like taking bits and pieces from all these elements and then pushing forward in these different things. And so when I say at the beginning that I believe Threshold is like a next generation campaign game, I fully believe that. I don't think there's going to be anything on the market that quite hits like it does, or really, I don't. And I think it's hard to make, because I actually think in order to make a game like Threshold, you have to go through a lot of lessons. People who were there in the original Stars of Icarios campaign, recognize that. Well, we've grown and evolved as a studio over the past 5 years, to making these types of games, and I think Threshold is like this culmination. And so it's I say all that to just say that every day that we're working on this game, we are just having a fantastic time making the game. It's a fun, like, just there's a joy to discover, like for me, to discover elements of the game that I want to put in it, and I know that the other designers are feeling the same way. And so it's incredibly excited. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your enthusiasm. It really keeps us going. You know, sign up for the playtest. Make sure to join the Discord community. Keep on chatting, and we will we'll keep on sharing information as we get closer to the launch date, whenever that may be. All right, take care.